Selamat malam semuanya. Let me ask, how many of you really know this piece? I'm sure not many of you listen to this piece because, it's being overshadowed by the newer version of the finale, and including myself. I learned the Schumann piano sonata in G. If we already complete one sonata, we just want to move on and learn the other two sonatas. So who would actually find some time to learn the original finale? So I would like to thank Pak Joe. If it's not because of this webinar, I might not complete. I just sight read and who's going to listen to these when I play for people? One of the comments, it says too long. Why it keeps on repeating? And that's exactly what we're going to talk about. That's too long, and you got confused and out of balance because we are seeing from the classical point of view. So today we're going to talk about Schumann and the romantic ambiguity. Okay, ready for the ride? And I have 20 minutes, so I have to talk really fast. So background overview, but Johannes already talked a little bit about this, so I'm not going to spend too much time. And he need to revise because Clara said it's too difficult, and he really listened to Clara. So we are thankful because of Clara, he had the newer version of the finale. So let's go to the next one. Now let's talk a little bit about ambiguity. This definition is very general. You can find it in any dictionary. It will tell you ambiguity means it has more than two possible meanings. So this is more than two, not just more than one. So it's more than two, and possibly it's hidden. So you have to dig it, and there's no right or wrong answer. You don't know if this is right or wrong. Okay, there's no clarity, there's no form, there's no structure. So it's hidden meanings. This is what exactly caused people when they listen to most of Schumann, even the small character pieces, you might feel a little bit confused, and you might feel like, what is Schumann doing here? What exactly is he doing? Is he out of creativity? Why is he keep on repeating the same motive? Okay, so that's ambiguity. Now, let's move on. Here, ambiguity in German Romanticism. This is getting exciting because we're going to talk about how ambiguity is one of the concepts that is so important in defining German Romanticism. Here we're talking about the period of 1790 to 1830. And this concept of ambiguity is very much apparent in Schumann's work that was composed in 1830s. Remember, 1830s, before he got married to Clara, because after he got married to Clara, everything changed, and he started to write more song cycles. So we are still in the 1830s where there are character pieces and there's large forms. There's no symphonies yet at this point. So now, what is ambiguity according to the German Romanticist? Here, Romanticists are more concerned about the unseen world, things that are not seen on the surface level, things that are not physical. They're more concerned about that. So they're more concerned about the inner self. I mean, but Johannes talked a lot about that troubled soul. So Romanticists, they are fond about expressing their inner soul. When you talk about soul, it's mostly talking about your feeling, your emotion, your desire, your will, and your thoughts, what you're thinking in your mind. Nobody knows what you're thinking because you might look happy, but you are thinking about something you don't know. So mysteries, romanticists love to dream because there's no limit in dreaming. There's no right or wrong way to dream. You just dream, imagination. And one important keyword that I would like to add, maybe most of you know, is longing. Longing, yearn for someone without a clear aim. You don't know how long you're going to yearn for someone. You don't know if that person will also long for you. You want to long just for the sake of you want to long because you were born in the romantic period and you are being romanticist. So it's okay for you to long for someone, even if that someone rejects you, you might keep on longing. So longing, then they are more concerned about all this unseen vagueness than with a clear and visible world. So classicist is more about architecture, form, structure, clarity. We're talking about contrasting ideas in a sonata form, but not so with the romanticist. So here is a more clear definition because we're going to talk about what Fritz Strick talked about in classic Romantik. He said that German Romanticism as the following, and we're going to look at all these categories. It's so apparent in this Presto Passionato. So first of all, what defines a German romantic piece is that it is very restless. You could see a restless movement. And then the second thing, you have unity without division. This is very important because in classical tradition, there's unity, but with division, unity with variety. There's unity within this variation, diverse ideas. But in Romantic, it's unity without division. And the third thing is called constant flux with endless transformation. Constant flux means it keeps on continuing, going on and on. It's like, seems endless. It seems to go on eternal. It seems to go to eternity. So constant flux means it keeps going on and on and on. And then longing without aim. Longing, I talked about this before, longing without goal, longing without a clear purpose. You just long without aim. So concerned with infinity. So romanticists are very concerned about the infinite world, about eternity, things that you can't see, things that keeps going on. So that's our soul, because our soul were created by God to last forever. So, and then vagueness and clarity. So now, before we move on to Presto Passionato, I think if you love painting or you know some romantic painting, this is very famous. So it's Wanderer Above the Sea Fog, was painted in 1818 by Caspar David Friedrich. So when we look at this man, it could be a man, I'm sure it's a man, from their body, it looks like man, but it keeps you wondering, with his back on us, we don't know what he's thinking. Is he happy, or does he want to commit suicide? We don't know. Is he longing for the future? Maybe. Is he thinking about the past? Probably. These are all possibilities. This is what is so ambiguous about this picture. But you're right to think about that, because the more you look at this, the more ideas you could cultivate. What is he trying to do? You know, why, how old is he? We don't know much. He looks young from the back, but he could probably be middle-aged or could probably be a teenager. So there are a series of questions that we ask ourselves. And where is he? You know, it says here, the painting above the sea fog, but how high is that place? Where is it dangerous? It looks like it's so much at the edge. How come he looks a bit so calm, and he had that stick on, and he's standing so steadily, as if he's gonna decide to jump or something? We don't know what's going on. So I want you to spend some time just looking at this and think about all kind of imagination. There's no right or wrong way to imagine what is going on with this picture. And when you have done so, we all will come up with different opinions about this picture, and that's exactly what it means by ambiguity. You're having two more possible meanings that's hidden in this picture. Maybe there are things that are hidden that we haven't seen because we only spent a few minutes on this. So I welcome you to search for this after the presentation, to really take this in and see what you can get. Right. Now, we go back to the piece, Ambiguity in Presto Passionato. First of all, this restless harmonic movement, you know, in the very beginning, it doesn't start, of course, from the tempo. We know it's Presto Passionato. So it has to go fast, it has to just go. So in the very beginning, we see this first inversion chord. It doesn't start with a tonic chord. When you start with that, it has, you know, in the original first, in the second movement, you have, so it starts always with the root position, and the third, and or the fourth movement. So the tonic was so clear, but not with this one. It starts with, and then repeat again, and then change the one, and repeat again. When you hit this 164, oh, that's finally, that's what I wanted to hear. So in the very beginning, you can hear this restless harmonic movement, because it keeps on, it cannot decide, should I go here or there? Very ambiguous where we want to go. It kind of obscured the root position chord by doing 1B, or the first inversion and dominant 13th chord. So this could also imply, first of all, it could, you think it's ambiguous because of it keep changing and keep repeating itself. And the second of all, it could also mean that it's the act of wandering. It's just keep on wandering, simply searching without aim. So that's one romantic idea that he poured on these chords. Okay, so when we look at Schumann music, we look behind what does he mean by writing these patterns, this harmonic pattern? What does it mean? What's the story behind it? That's what you're trying to find out when you study this piece. So this is what I just played just now, and these are the music, and I played until here, just now, the 164, going to the dominant. And now the second category, what caused this piece of music to, is called ambiguous, is because of the musical allusion. I will explain a little bit about this. Now, the descending three-note pattern that you see in the very beginning of the piece of music, B flat A G, right? This one, it actually, if you're a classicist, you probably define, oh, it's just a three notes descending pattern. As descending scale patterns keep repeating, because that's just the motive. So as a romanticist, you will find out, why does he keep on repeating this? Apparently there's a lot, not just in this, but most of the movement and in most of the piano sonata has this 5 descending note pattern. Where does that come from? But more specifically in here, because it's the 3rd degree of G minor. And we're going to look at Clara's own composition, which is titled Utomo. So, but before we do that, I'm going to explain a little bit why is he quoting Clara? So for Schumann, musical allusion is when you're quoting someone else's work and put it in your work. It's called musical allusions. And Schumann did a lot of this in the fantasy. And you know that he quoted Beethoven's song Andi Geliebte at the very end. And here in Schumann, this musical allusion, it means more than just remembering the act of remembering Clara, or just basically just want to quote Clara. You know, it actually expresses his deep longing. I'm sorry. I have to turn off. Okay, this airplane mode. Okay. Let's see. Sorry for the interruption. Let's go back to this present. Okay, musical allusion, B flat, A, and G. Just now we talked about how Schumann is not just quoting Clara for the sake of remembering her, but more than that is about him expressing his deep longing for Clara. He really yearned to be with Clara because during that time they were separated. I found out about that they're sort of in love, so they're forbidden. Sorry. Okay, let's go back. So it expresses his deep longing for Clara during the time when they were not allowed to see each other. So this is the point when we really need to know how important Clara is in his life and how much in love Robert is with Clara. So we're going to study about this Utomo. I'm going to play for you so you see the resemblance of the opening of Clara Utomo, which is sometimes it's called Andantino. So here you have it's very clear. You hear that La is at the 3rd degree. Yeah, La. Or if you sing solfege, it will be a Mi. So here, in the opening of Presto Passionato, you have B flat. Yeah, this is also the 3rd degree. It resembles, although it's just 3 notes out of the 5 notes. And then wait until here. This is in C minor, also the 3rd degree. Okay, so here we see there's a musical allusion that's quite clear here. And next, we see there's a musical figures with extra musical meaning. I really want to point this out because I really think it's important. And the opening harmony, we are going to see there are lots of 13 chords, yeah? 13 chords as well as 9 chords. So when you look at 13 chords, I will show you the score. This, okay, this, that's the 13th chord, and then there's also a 9th chord at the end when he goes. That's the 9th chord. So when you listen to the 13th chord, it's naturally the function is to enrich the harmony or to increase tension. But more than that, actually Schumann wrote this because it has a very personal meaning. And we're gonna find out what kind of personal meaning is that. We're gonna take a peek at the love letter. You know? Now, this is what Schumann wrote to Clara. When I'm thinking of you very intently, I find myself with the piano and seem to prefer writing to you in chords of 9, and especially with the familiar chord of 13. He wrote this. So this is what he wrote. This is his gesture of remembering. When he's thinking about that, oh, I'm thinking about Clara, then he said, and then he write that chord. So let's look at the music so you understand what I see. So right from the very beginning, you already see this. Yeah. And then of course it's being repeated here. Okay, and then repeat again. And then at the conclusion, we have a 9. And then 9. Okay, so those the 9th chord are very quite apparent to express when he's thinking deeply about Clara. Okay, isn't that interesting? Now we find that the message behind the notes. Now we're going to talk about unity without division. One of the characteristics of ambiguity in Romanticism is also unity without division. Okay, so when we are talking about the second theme, normally second theme is to contrast with the first theme, right? In the classical tradition. But here in the Romantic Sonata, we see that rather than contradicting the first theme, try to conflict with it. As in traditional form, the second theme kind of emerged from the first theme. It continues the journey of the first theme into the unknown. That's why we're confused. How long is this going to go? It seems quite similar. And we don't know if it's just the second theme. It seems like the tonality has changed, but we're not sure. Sometimes we got fooled by these motifs that sound similar. So listening to the second theme, it invokes this feeling of deja vu. Actually, I borrowed this term from this musicologist, Paul Richter, who studies Schumann's music, especially his large-scale forms. Large-scale form means like sonata forms. It's big, it's not small character pieces. So you will often find that in his sonata forms where it keeps repeating itself. There's a deja vu. You know, it feels like you heard it before. You know, I've heard it somewhere. How come it appear again? It has been pre-lived. It lived before. And you could see this in musical allusions. Let's say if you know Clara's composition, you heard her, and then suddenly you hear here, I heard this somewhere. So it brings back like memories from the past too, deja vu. So what is so deja vu about the first and the second theme? Now, the first and the second theme are a lot, abundance, are replete with rising third, yeah, and the descending 5-note pattern. So let me show you the score here. So you see, and then put a bracket. So you can see the top note. There's a rising third, and then aside from allusion to Clara, this descending 5 patterns. You are going to see the same pattern here in the second theme. Now the second theme we have rising third. Okay, I played the whole thing. So descending 5-note pattern is similar to the first theme. Yeah. So the 5th category is talking about this continuity, constant flux, okay, with endless transformation. It seems like he could go on and on, like he never run out of ideas on how to improvise. It seems improvisatory and so free. So the second theme in B flat major is being transformed in endless fragments. I'll show you all kinds of fragments that occurs after the second theme appear, and then it keep repeating but in different version. And modulations, there are a lot of modulation, which seems to continue on and on without clear objective. We don't know where it's going. Keep changing modulations, going B flat and then going to F major, all these different tonalities. So we could also see these continuity in different keys as, as just his insatiable desire. He was never satisfied until he's united with Clara. We could see in that way. He really longed for her aimlessly because he doesn't know how long he's going to wait until he can see Clara. Because during that time, the situation was really intense. Clara was underage, he was still under his father's control. And the father really strongly prohibited her to connect with, to stop all the letters writing with Schumann. But of course, at the end, they succeeded after all this really legal battle at the court. It's really ugly. But during that time, Clara was still listening to the father. So Robert was really don't know how to win her heart. So that's why we say it's long for her aimlessly. Because he doesn't know how long he should wait, but he's still doing what he is, still writing a letter and still hoping that she would, will write him back. Now, here is the constant transformation. Now, this is the theme, the second theme indeed, which I just played for you just now. Let me play one more time so you have that in your head. And here, yeah. Then let's take a look at how he transform this or make a variation. There you go. And keeps going, and then the thing becomes, it goes down to the bass line. Yeah, and then now in the development section, I didn't even know this is development section because it kind of like continues seamlessly to the development section. We are fooled by it, not until a scholar would analyze this in terms of classical standard and say this is the development. And then after, when you think about it, then it's clear it's a development section. This is development already, so it goes, it's similar, but it adds a appoggiatura. This was like an improvisation. Then we have example 4. Now in B flat, it's still B flat now. And then transform. Okay, so I'll stop right there. That's the transformation, and let's see. And then eventually, during a little bit middle of the development, you have that there, and why the right hand is doing. Okay, then so that was the 5 examples of how he transformed the second theme based on this rising third, and he makes all this continuity continue to transform itself. Now, number 6 is very important. You don't really get what German Romanticism is until you know what digression is. What is digression? Digression means when the author, suddenly would just divert your attention by bringing in a new plot. It's like a story within a story. So it interrupts your attention in the main plot. So by definition, digression is just a style of writing in which the author interrupts the flow of a main plot temporarily, only temporarily, okay, by introducing a new idea, a new story, maybe a new character. Yeah. So the author then, after that digression, it will then typically, most of them will return to the main plot after that digression. So it could be a story within a story. So the purpose of digression is to divert your attention and also to increase tension. So for dramatic purpose, you need digression in literature. Here in Presto Passionato, Schumann interrupts the main motive, everything that you heard that keeps renewing itself, in different masks, you could say, and you felt like we're in this labyrinth, it just never ends. And then suddenly, there's a new idea that happened. At the point when the music's supposed to go back to the first theme, you felt like this is going somewhere. I know this is going somewhere. The first theme is going to come. Then the new idea comes in the middle of development section, in which the retransition should take place. So retransition is happening halfway, and then he cut it off, and then suddenly this new idea comes in. So we are going to look at the score. How does that happen? A very brief one, though. So after the brief digression, Schumann returns to the main motive, and then the retransition, and then going back to the recapitulation. Exactly how we hear in the very beginning. This happened again, exactly the same. So now here, example 1, we see a brief digression occurs in the middle of the development titled FIFO Molto. This is actually Johannes Brahms' edition, but you could see in Animato Molto is possible as well. So when you see this, how do you know it's a new idea? Look at the time signature. It becomes 2/4 because before it's 6/16. Yeah, not many composers write in 6/16, but he wrote this in 6/16. All semiquaver, there's 6 of them, 6/16, and then suddenly become 2/4. So you go, it's a little bit different. Totally new. Suddenly, this meter just come up. Yeah, this is the digression. This is what we mean by digression. And at the end of digression, when this motive keeps modulate again, of course, it repeat itself and modulate, then this passage come back. Here we have 6/16, so it goes back to the passage before the digression, go back to the main plot. So we go. When you hear that, you know you're going back to the main plot. Yeah. Okay. Now this keeps going until the transition. Oh, so I don't know how to stop that. Keep coming to this level. Okay. Now it goes to this retransition. Yeah. And then recapitulation. Here, the retransition, when you hear. That's the recapitulation, just the passage before retransition. So you see in the development section, in the middle of it, you have retransition and it's being interrupted. And then there's a new idea, that's what we call digression, and then goes back to retransition, then recapitulations. All right. So after we talk about all these types of ambiguity in Presto Passionato, so what is our role? After we know so much, that makes us confusing, yeah? Confusing, yeah? We have to know this role, so what do we have to do? So, well, to perceive the recurrences or the repetition of this familiar motive, not just as repetitions, because if we think of it just like repeat, we get bored and we don't have creativity to cultivate, to play with the tempo or maybe play with the dynamic or a textural balance. So we think of it as a narrative, as storytelling. So think of it as a character development in a story. It just needs to develop itself. That's why you see the same person, it changes. In the very beginning, we see it's quite a good man, but then suddenly he turns to be the bad guy or something like that. You could think of that kind of story. And then second thing is to maintain this continuity, that liveliness of the motive. So each time it appears, like you feel something fresh about it. That's why Schumann needs to change tonality. So to keep that thing fresh. So the focus is no longer on manipulating just contrast in the motive, but is to manipulate in the way that he changes the tonality, even time signature with a new idea. That's the way he developed the storyline within this piece. So, and then to shift our focus from the boundaries of this uniform, since everything is the same, to the freedom of creating contrast. You could still do contrast, even though the composition doesn't seem to contradict itself. You could still create contrast by being flexible with tempo, yeah, with the dynamic and textural balance. Okay, so that's what I think you could take home as a performer. And very last one, this is what I want to share with you, and it's good to close with this. This is what Schumann think what music is actually is. Schumann think music is the language of the soul, Seelensprache. So it is the language of the soul. And according to Schumann, if music just contains sound, it will be boring. It should express the state of the soul. And this is what he wrote in 1833. And then in his letter to Clara in 1838, he knows that his music is very hard to be understood by most people, because he said, I'm affected by everything that goes on in the world. And I think about it all my way. Anything that happened, politics, literature, and people, and then I long to express them, and find an outlet for them in music. And that is why my compositions are sometimes difficult to understand, because they are connected with distant interests. They're connected with his imagination. We could never understand why Schumann had his own world, imaginary world, with all this David's Bund, all this Raro and so many personalities. Florestan Eusebius is there, and he even invent pet names for Clara, so all these characters that he invented in his own imaginary world. So nobody understand that. That's why it's difficult for people to understand his music. And sometimes striking, because everything extraordinary that happens, everything that happened in his lifetime impresses him. That's why his pieces are very autobiographical. If you want to know why does Schumann write this, especially in the 1830s, most of them have to do with women, okay? When he was in love with Ernestine von Fricken before Clara, because Clara was so young when he started to have lesson with her father, he composed Papillon, yeah, and Carnival, and also for symphonic etudes is also for Ernestine von Fricken. So and then for Clara, for David's Bund was especially written for her, and of course the Fantasie in C major was also written for her. So it's very autobiographical, and he really connect what's going on in his life to music. So it's really a storytelling in the music of Schumann.